Reports have emerged that on the night of January the 20th, 2025, Ukraine's defense forces used long-range kamikaze drones to strike the Kazan Aircraft Production Association, the manufacturer of Tu-22M3 and Tu-160 strategic bombers. According to Defense Express, while publicly available information currently only confirms the fact of a UAV strike on the Kazan Aircraft Production Association, the incident raises important questions about Russia's ability to produce new Tu-22M3 and Tu-160 bombers, presenting a paradox in their defense industry. As Defense Express reports, Russia currently lacks the capacity to produce brand new Tu-160 and Tu-22M3 bombers from scratch. Instead, to assemble what it labels as new aircraft of these types, Russia relies heavily on Soviet-era stockpiles that have been dormant at Kazan Aircraft Production Association for decades. This process is often referred to as reproduction in Russian propaganda circles. Specifically regarding the Tu-160, Defense Express notes that between 2022 and 2023, Russia assembled 3 bombers under the Tu-160M designation using these Soviet-era reserves. Furthermore, prior to February 2022, one operational Tu-160 aircraft was undergoing modernization at Kazan Aircraft Production Association, also being designated as Tu-160M. The paradox lies in the fact that these 4 Tu-160M bombers, capable of carrying up to 12 cruise missiles each, are now expected to enter service with the Russian Aerospace Forces only in 2025. This delay comes despite the fact that all 4 planes were initially scheduled for delivery by 2023. This suggests that there are likely issues with the engines and onboard systems of these bombers, leaving KAPO formally able to present the completed Tu-160Ms to the military, but rendering them unusable for their intended purpose. Instead, they've been used merely as props during propaganda events, such as Putin's visit to the Kazan plant in February 2024. The situation surrounding the modernized Tu-22M3M becomes even more puzzling. Defense Express notes that the first Tu-22M3M variant was rolled out in 2018 and the second followed in March 2023. However, these remain the only 2 aircraft of this variant. Despite this, Capo's leadership announced by late 2023 an ambitious but unrealized plan to equip all operational Tu-22Ms in the Russian Aerospace Forces with aerial refueling probes. The significance of the Kazan Aircraft Production Association, as Defense Express highlights, cannot be overstated. Capo is one of Russia's largest defense industry enterprises, employing as many as 8,500 people. The recent strike on this facility, therefore, raises concerns not just about the production of these bombers, but also about the overall stability of Russia's defense industry and its capacity to maintain and modernize its aerospace fleet. In 2024, the Russian army suffered record losses in death and injuries in the war with Ukraine. In December, in particular, more Russian servicemen were killed than in any other month of the war, the UK Ministry of Defense reported on the X network. Russia has suffered more casualties in Ukraine in recent months than at any other time during its illegal invasion, the department said in a statement. At the same time, the Ministry of Defense provided the number of Russian losses for each year of the full-scale invasion. It is noted that in 2022, the Russians lost 105,960 servicemen killed and wounded. In 2023, 252,940. In 2024, 429,660 servicemen. In total, since the beginning of the full-scale war, Russian losses, according to the British Ministry of Defense, have exceeded 790,000. As for 2024, the data shows that since June, the number of Russian casualties has only increased. If in June it was 34,890 killed and wounded, then in December it was 48,670. At present, Russians concentrated their best units to storm Pokrovsk, but in vain. The losses of Russian troops in this area are still many times higher than those of Ukrainian troops, the Commander-in-Chief of Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, informs. The Russian army is making every effort to take it, and we are doing everything to prevent its capture. Some prophets said that we would lose Pokrovsk on September the 30th. September the 30th passed, and then they said that we would lose it by October the 30th, noted Syrsky. He noted that the invaders were concentrating their best units in this area. Russians can change the troops because they have a greater potential for offensive actions so far, Syrsky emphasized. At the same time, according to the Armed Forces Chief, the enemy's losses are many times higher than those of the Ukrainian army in this area. Pokrovsk is a town in the Donetsk region that has become one of the main points of defense for the Ukrainian armed forces in eastern Ukraine. The Russians are concentrating their forces to break through the Ukrainian defense in this area. Ukrainian diplomat Roman Bezmutny believes that the US can only fully grasp the situation and threats through an actual attack on its territory. He expressed this opinion on Espresso TV. The West is not ready to mobilize resources. There is no understanding of the threats coming from Russia. For example, Ukraine received F-16s. I think if you've read about the kind of F-16s arriving, they are equipped with outdated systems and are not adapted to modern warfare. Meanwhile, the US has tens of thousands of such units sitting in its deserts. They need to be upgraded and restored, but how? The Lend-Lease program has essentially died, and when the Democrats couldn't revive it, the Republicans are even less likely to. Even Roosevelt, a Democrat, could only do it thanks to state monopoly capitalism. In today's conditions, this is simply impossible. Bezmutny explained. The diplomat is convinced that after Donald Trump's victory, Europe must focus more on its own security. According to him, London and Brussels must take the initiative. Modern Europe can do it, but it needs to be revitalized. It can only be revitalized by uniting, and unity can come either from fear or through significant investment. The US can only be brought to understand the situation, forgive me, by a Pearl Harbor. I don't wish this on them, but it seems they're heading in that direction. There's a lack of understanding of many components we're discussing. The situation, in my view, is now in the hands of Brussels and London. Brussels must do everything to mobilize Europe. And Trump is right that 2% of GDP is too little. And Rutte is right in saying we need to arm ourselves or else we'll be learning Russian. By the way, he said, you will be learning Russian, which is interesting as he distances himself from the majority. In this context, mobilizing resources to help Ukraine as much as possible is crucial, he added. Manhattan University professor Igor Eisenberg believes that if Donald Trump speaks with Putin soon without unveiling new pressure tactics on Russia, it will signal US weakness. I believe that if Trump calls Putin and meets with him under such conditions, it will show the weakness of the US President Joe Biden ended all contacts with Putin even before February the 24th, 2022. He ceased communication before it became clear that Putin would invade Ukraine. Moreover, Joe Biden repeatedly stated that communication would not resume until Russia changes its policies. Therefore, if the next US president changes the approach to communication with Putin, it will certainly not demonstrate the strength of the US, Eisenberg explained. According to the professor, Donald Trump should first initiate an increase in aid to Ukraine to have additional leverage over the Russian dictator before speaking with him. If the US president first initiated an increase in aid to Ukraine, followed by some talks about communicating with the Russian dictator, it would be understandable. If a Trump-Putin conversation takes place soon, I think it will only play into Russia's hands. Putin is not interested in making any concessions. He continues to demand Ukraine's capitulation, he added.